Welcome back, everybody, into Bill's Chat. I am Josh McCarty. With me tonight, as always, is Luca. Well, Luca, the Bills did the thing. They beat the Chiefs in the regular season. I am here to tell you this is not a ha ha ha. The November champs are back. See you in the playoffs. I think this was a massive win from the standings perspective. I'm thrilled about it. I'm going to ask you how you're doing tonight. And also, I'm going to kick it to you and ask you, how are you doing with this win?
Doing good. I mean, it felt like that game got a little bit more stressful than it needed to late. I think there was some things we can probably discuss in this episode as to how we got to that point. That it felt like it really didn't need to be. But overall, win's a win. Doesn't matter looking back. Um, it feels it's an impactful win, right? Like I wouldn't be out there being like it's a massive win. It's a massive win. It's an impactful win. It's an important win. Um, as you mentioned, it's an important win when it comes to the relationship of what it means for the AFC standings. Potential playoff breakdown because both of these teams we would expect to be making the playoffs. I mean, I will say for anyone that thinks there's even a possibility or hint after this that the Chiefs could even go as far as missing out, because I loved that CBS even put up the graphic showing Chiefs dropped to the in the hunt category and not even in those 3 wildcard spots. If you paid close enough attention, you noticed that the Jaguars were still listed at 4-3. They did end up pulling out that win, but they were at 4-3 because they were in overtime, potentially losing that game to the Raiders. They did squeak it out thanks to a batted down 2-point conversion after the Raiders scored with I think it was on the last play of the game. But overall, if you paid attention to also who was after them in the hunt, they were losing record teams. Like there is a clear gap. There's going to be one potential team that misses the playoffs in the AFC side, Josh, that is a plus 500 record. So realistically, do you think the Chiefs are going to be 500 or less? I would say the likelihood is very small, and therefore they will end up in the playoffs at some point at some place. Winning the division will be much more difficult for them, that's for sure. But overall, the Bills getting this win and kind of putting the Chiefs in a very difficult position when it comes to the upcoming remainder of schedule, as we are now in the back half of the season, it feels good. This is the kind of win, after we had that little bit of a lull in the season with a couple losses stacked up going into the bye week. This is the kind of win that feels like it got the train truly back on the tracks for the Bills. I don't, you have another date with New England when it comes to division purposes, and we'll see what goes with that. But overall, vibes are great. Like I wouldn't say they're phenomenal, but you get this win, you get it over the hump, you put the Chiefs in a difficult position. You are still in a fine position when it comes to your season and what you can do with the outcome of it all. That I just it's an important win. It's an impactful win, and it's one that could play out big, for later on where are the Chiefs playing their first playoff game, because inevitably they will most likely have to play in the wild card round, and or where are the Bills going to be playing. And this game could have dictated where all of that will come and go. So big fan of what happened, of course, and I'm happy that the Bills took out the win. It's not a hang up your November championship banner by any stretch of the imagination, but also between this, you even have a Colts loss in Pittsburgh in the fashion that it was almost like a reality check for them. Everything's alive for the Bills thanks to this win, and that in its own right is just how important it was to come away with that win.
The Seahawks are a wagon, by the way, as I'm watching this game. Um, so you mentioned the playoffs, and that's the whole thing. It's the seeding. I think we all agree that barring some kind of catastrophe, both the Bills and the Chiefs will be in the playoffs. I had put out a tweet from our account on Wednesday or Thursday prior to the Thursday night game between the Ravens and the Dolphins, that random bold prediction that means nothing. Bills versus Chiefs winner will get the 1 seed. Bills versus Chiefs loser will open the playoffs on the road in Baltimore. And there's a lot that goes into that tweet, right? Because the Ravens coming into this week had a 2-5 record, and both the Chiefs and the Bills were trailing in their division. But when you start looking at these schedules, and it doesn't have to mean anything, but if you start looking ahead, the winner of this game would not only have a tiebreaker advantage over the other, with both of them having favorable schedules down the stretch. But the loser then falls 2 games behind a team that's already ahead of them in the division. And in the Bills' case, well, 1.5. The Bills have already lost. That's the half, a head-to-head game with New England. So I still do believe that to be true. I believe that Baltimore is going to be the 4 seed. And I believe that the Chiefs now have a real tall order to catch the Broncos, who squeaked out a game today in Houston, particularly if the Chiefs lose to Denver next week, which becomes a massive game. And what a dream scenario for Bills fans to have Lamar Jackson and Pat Mahomes doing battle in round 1 of the playoffs, to be guaranteed that one of those 2 will be out of the tournament in round 1, especially if you're the 1 seed and you get them out of there while you're kicking up and watching. So, a lot of football left. The Colts lost today and looked a little bit exposed. The Patriots squeaked out a win against Atlanta today, where it looked like Atlanta could have pulled it out, but they missed an extra point and then totally threw up all over themselves with the ball in their hands late. But ultimately, the Bills did the thing. They beat the Chiefs. But for me, Luca, there was a point in this game in the fourth quarter. It felt like it might have been slipping away a little bit, but I was so impressed with what I had seen from the Bills defensively that I had gotten myself in a mindset where even if the Bills found a way to lose this game, I think I would have come away from it optimistic, because you have for me to be optimistic about the Bills at this stage of their growth under Josh Allen, I have to believe there's a real pathway for them to win a Super Bowl. And for me to believe that, it needs to be more than just, well, Josh Allen can get hot and it's a game that starts with the flip of a coin. You never know. Like, I need to see real tangible reasons outside of the quarterback's great. And what I saw today was a defense that's capable of doing things that I didn't think they were capable of doing. And it's amazing to me how quickly Maxwell Harrison has hit the ground running. And that's where I want to start. I know Michael Hoyt is a massive story, particularly with the injury. Cole Bishop is a massive story. We're going to talk about this. Cole Bishop is absolutely baked into this point that I'm going to talk about right now. The way the Bills can play coverage right now. This is a Bishop point, a Hairston point, and unfortunately, an anybody on the field that's not named Taylor Rapp point. The Bills are finally able to play like the Bills. You saw it today, where they would pre-align their safeties pre-snap, post-snap, give the quarterback a different picture. It fooled Patrick Mahomes. And then now, for the first time, and I can remember maybe since Tre'Davious White's second or third year in the league, they have a cornerback that can go step for step with really anybody. And Tre'Davious White was never a 4-3 guy. But my favorite play of the game was an incomplete pass. It was a one-on-one deep ball to Xavier Worthy, and Maxwell Harrison was in his hip pocket. When I saw that, I was like, oh, we're back. We are so back. There's so many thoughts I have on the defense, Luca. At the risk of just throwing them all out there right now, one more being, hey, McDermott, I never need you not calling plays again. The optimism I have about this Bills defense, even with the Hoyt injury, is so much higher than I thought it could possibly be coming into this game, that I am back to a point, Luca, where I can dream big about this season.
It's not even that they're capable of finally of doing something right now. I think I'll even one up it a little bit. This defense is doing something at the moment that I don't think we've seen them capable of doing when it comes to the ability to cover in the manner that they are able to in the McDermott era. I don't remember a defense in a McDermott area that could truly man up across the board. And I'm not saying that they did it perfectly. And I will also say this, I need McDermott to trust that he can do that more. We saw a perfect example of not doing that after a timeout. Oh man, we will get into that whole thing. Let's positivity here. They can, with Maxwell Harrison, Christian Benford, Cole Bishop, if he's even asked to be manned up on someone, which he is capable of doing. Cam Lewis is still effective in this realm and world. They can actually across the board kind of play that man matchup and just stick to hips and be tacky and just stay in coverage in that regard, which you then have a Patrick Mahomes, one of the best, if not the best in this generation at the position question what he's seeing downfield, not seeing anything downfield through his progressions, and need to feel the pressure collapsing on him in the pocket and extend plays more than he would like. Patrick Mahomes is magical at doing these things, of course. We've seen it for years and years. But it's not like Mahomes wants to lean on that as the ability he can do regularly. That's something he needs to kind of pull out of his back pocket, break glass in case of emergency. That's not a sustainable thing to do every play. But this Bills defense showed tonight that they clearly can do exactly how you described it with the personnel, stick to hips, allow them to completely blanket individuals down the field that are very respectable receivers, and they will most likely be able to do that against a majority of this league and what receiving options there are, thanks to the current form of a lot of players that are available at this moment in time. Not trying to kind of bash a Taylor Rapp right now. He's hurt. He's going to be out for the season. Things like that. That's unfortunate. Maybe there was even something to his negative play that was related to what these injuries are. That's reality. It just, the play we saw out of Taylor Rapp, for instance, last season was definitely a much better version of him as a player than this year. And it felt like that drop off has to have some sort of correlation to potentially what these injuries are. And maybe they were more serious that he was trying to navigate through earlier on before finally just, hey, it's too much, put me on IR. Ultimately, it's the decision was made to kind of wrap up his season. So, geez. I didn't mean to say wrap up season like that. But anyways, I digress. I love what we're seeing from Cole Bishop, and I love the hit the ground running we are seeing when it comes to Max Hairston. That it's I love that this is the thing that we're doing to start off this podcast. The defense provided something that 3 weeks ago not any individual thought was capable out there. I firmly believe that. Even if you were the biggest optimist with Max Hairston, I don't think you could have expected the immediate results that you are seeing out of this kid. It's phenomenal. The sky's the limit, it feels like, when it comes to him as an individual player and stuff like that. And next thing you know, you could have a very dynamic duo when it comes to your boundary corners in Christian Benford and Max Hairston. And even to that fact, Christian Benford looks a lot more comfortable in his own right, where early on in the season, it felt like we were wondering, hey, we just finally gave you the bag. We're seeing a dip in play. This sucks. Things of that nature. You expect better of a Benford. It night and day difference between those first 6 weeks and now what we're seeing as of this Chiefs game out of 47. Benford looked great. Everyone's looking great in the secondary, that you're allowing that front four to just get at the quarterback, create the pressure they need to, and ultimately get the job done. This was the first game of the season since the Jets game. And even then, I think I wouldn't even put it that way. That felt like top to bottom, complete team effort win. That it was just, yeah, if you needed to see something like that, because you bring up the Josh Allen, could get hot, that could be a way to win Super Bowl. That is an absolutely possible scenario. I mean, Josh Allen has that capability, but as you said perfectly, you don't want to lean on that as your only ability to win a championship. You want to have a team and a roster and a mentality around that is comfortable with being able to make that run, because realistically that is something more that feels real, possible and realistic to expect. So overall, to see the defense step up in the way they are, to see even complementary football on the offensive side for the most part, it was just a full 53-man roster effort that got this over the line. And this is something that, coming out of that Monday night game in Atlanta, no one expected this defense to even be capable of any level of play that was close to what we saw against Mahomes in Kansas City tonight.
Yeah, and when I look at this defense, I think we talked about it a little bit on the live show, where we're starting to see this defensive line really become a strength of this team. And there were actually hints of that even early in the year when they were struggling to stop the run. I think your brain, and I say your, like, the football fan's brain, has a hard time computing that the defensive line can be playing well when you're getting gashed in the run game. But I think it speaks more to how the second and third level of the Bills defense was hitting their gaps or really not hitting their gaps, where the defensive line was playing well. Um, this defensive line was phenomenal today. It was, holy cow. The Seahawks are just going to make this a very uninteresting game on Sunday Night Football. But as excited as I am about Harrison, and he is the story to me because of how quickly he's assimilated, to me, right there with him is Cole Bishop. And you and I have been talking about this all season, all preseason. It's he has to play. He has to get reps. It's not always going to be pretty. There's going to be moments where he bites hard. I believe it was him last year in Houston, right? Who like bit hard on a on a play fake, and
Yeah.
Nico Collins mossed the defense, and everybody's like, "Oh, this kid can't play." Get those things out of your system. He has completely gotten better every time he's out there. He just needs reps. And that's where I was with him. That's where you were with him. He has an athletic ceiling that did not exist in any of the options that were available in the safety room. And maybe Jordan Hancock is similar, but Cole Bishop got drafted in the second round because of his athletic freakishness nature, and he just needed experience. And that's why you and I were pounding the table, keep him out there. And credit to the Bills, because there were some growing pains, and it's still not perfect. But the growth you've seen from week 1 to week 2 to now being an impact player, and it feels like he's in the right position more often than not, and he's in impactful position more often than not. The growth we've seen from him has been great to see. It's changing a lot of the narrative on last year's draft class, which unfortunately, with the 2 picks around him, Dwayne Carter's giving you nothing because of an injury, and Keon Coleman is a whole other topic. Cole Bishop has a chance to really salvage that. The Bills may have found, hopefully, a long-term answer at safety, but more importantly than that, Luca, by the time January rolls around, which is when the next set of money games is, there's a chance that he is playing at such a high level of safety that he's not just getting by, he's a strength of this team, and that's what has me most excited.
Oh, 1000%. Cole Bishop, even when you had people questioning if he was ready and you saw, or you're banking off of the previous form and what you saw in his limited action before this season began, he, when I watched a player like Cole Bishop, and the reason that I was all about, hey, you just got to ride it out, you got to ride it out, is the athleticism and the understanding of the position even felt like it was there partially. Not the athleticism part, the understanding of the position. It just felt like he wasn't trusting his eyes and he wasn't quite comfortable yet. That was simple as that. It just looked like he wasn't quite yet letting it just go through the motions, right? Letting the decision making become primary and almost secondary at the same time, letting it just be instinct rather than kind of having to think it through. A lot of football, it feels like, is if you're thinking about it, you're already a step behind. You shouldn't be thinking about it. You should be reacting to it instantaneously off of your instincts, off of your gut. And it wasn't quite there yet with Cole Bishop, understandably so. This is only a second-year player. This is a player that was hurt going into his rookie season that didn't see live reps regularly. So realistically, this is for all of intensive purposes, his full rookie season. This is his year where he's getting regular snaps and you're trying to get him through these things. There are growing pains to all players where they're trying to get up to speed at the NFL level. It's just a different beast. You're playing the best of the best in this sport. You're not ever getting kind of just a handful of players or better players week on, week off. It depends on the day and what school you're playing. Every team in the NFL is still loaded roster with talent. Obviously, in the perspective of the NFL, you might have a Bengals team that just has a bunch of accountants, it feels like, at defense, but that's an anomaly. Everyone's still in the upper echelon comparatively to anyone else that could even potentially play the sport. So Cole Bishop was just trying to get comfortable and trust his eyes. As soon as that switch flipped, you could tell. It feels like that Saints game and that one big pick, when that happened, that truly was a turning point for him. But even before then, you could see the flashes happening more regularly, and it felt like that switch was about to be flipped. That Saints game feels like the moment in which that did happen. And even in those losses we saw against the Patriots, against the Falcons, and then the result after the bye against the Panthers, and now this beautiful culmination against the Chiefs, you said it perfectly. He has not been a problem in that defense. He's been one of the solutions there, that it's like, you have a guy all of a sudden at safety again. This is the first time since we had your all-pro duo out there of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, where at least you have one safety out there that you are now officially comfortable with. It's been years since we've had something like that. But Cole Bishop is clearly trusting everything in front of him. He knows what he's supposed to do. He knows his job and assignment. He's comfortable even being flexible in that defense overall and where his coverage assignment is, that he's being utilized like a weapon by McDermott and this defensive staff. He is being moved around to be put in impactful situations. And we saw a bunch of those against the Chiefs in this game that I am so excited to see what comes on the second half of the season when it comes to Cole Bishop. And then, like you said, in those money games, in the playoffs, when Cole Bishop is there in position, I expect, and I will not be surprised if he were to come away with big moments in those games, because he is definitely in his wheelhouse right now. He is trusting everything. His eyes are telling him the story that needs to be read, and he is absolutely dialed into understanding everywhere he needs to be at any moment in time to be a big proponent of success when it comes to this defense. So love everything about it. A McDermott team needs steady, aggressive, and also reliable play at the safety position. That's what's been lacking. That's why we've seen a dip in play. It feels like 24 and Cole Bishop is finally trending it upwards to maybe get back to a more steady, impactful defense that can hopefully get this thing over the line where we all expect the Bills to be when Josh Allen's your quarterback.
All right, so Michael Hoyt is going to miss the rest of the season. This has not been announced, but I mean, it's a confirmed Achilles injury. I can't remember the last time in the history of the NFL you hear a guy leaving ruled out right away with an Achilles injury, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, he'll be back in a week. Um, so let's assume he's gone. I think that's a safe assumption. Assume Ed Oliver's gone until the playoffs. We saw what we saw of the offense today, Luca. I swear I'm not going to find a way to bring the trade deadline into every show. This is the last show before the trade deadline.
Well, I mean,
Knowing what you know now, Ed Oliver gone to the playoffs, Michael Hoyt gone till next season, the receivers are what they are. Power rank for me the needs for the Bills at the trade deadline as you see it.
receiver still number one. Receiver is still number one to me. I now do tip defensive line number two. Where you go with that, I'm not entirely sure. There was a report out there that they were looking into interior defensive line. I don't subscribe to that need. I will go more edge. I think the reason I go there is because we saw the impact, even as small as it was. And I say that just for timeline wise, not because of the impact itself being small, that Michael Hoyt provided coming back from that suspension. And the end result we had from the edge play was still fine, but it clearly felt like Michael Hoyt and just that one additional body that is to the level of a Michael Hoyt being in the rotation and being available for this team clearly brought it up another tier. Joey Bosa and Greg Rousseau still doing their things. AJ Epinesa shows up when he feels like it. And then all of a sudden, Michael Hoyt was there to really start spicing things up. And Michael Hoyt was definitely being moved around more than you see these other edges as well as a moving chess piece because of just how impactful he was. You're not going to necessarily find another Michael Hoyt out there. I mean, he does feel like a little bit of a more unique situation. And I'm not saying it's like because he's also an all pro, but it feels like the answers you have at edge right now, assuming that he's gone for the season, don't exist in-house right now. So where are you going to go? Like Landon Jackson, he's a rookie. He hasn't shown as if he's hitting the ground running when he's been given opportunities. So if that's where, hey, we're just going to lean on him again, we're going to be activating him again, so on and so forth. Like that doesn't fill me with confidence. That feels like, hey, you're going to be leaning heavily most on your top three guys when it comes to Joey Bosa, Greg Rousseau, and AJ Epinesa. To me, that is just, hey, Greg Rousseau and Joey Bosa are your guys, and then everyone else is rotational pieces. Epinesa can at least make splash plays occasionally. I wouldn't mind. I still like, I'm not sitting here saying it's mission critical, get another edge, but that feels like the next thing for this team to then a wide receiver, which is still target number one, pun intended, because it's even today when the offense was actually moving very fluid, you look at where the production was. I mean, Kincaid's your leading receiver. Perfect. I mean, Kincaid is a dog. He's a guy that I would love to see continue with this trend. Khalil Shakir had 7 catches on 8 targets for 43 yards. The reason it felt like that is because half of those at least were just those quick kind of outs and screens and swing plays. Like that's what they're utilizing Khalil Shakir for primarily. And then let me just go down this list real quick. 1 target, 1 catch for Dawson Knox, 1 target, 1 catch for Elijah Moore, 1 catch, 2 targets for Jackson Hawes, 2 targets, 2 catches for Keon Coleman, 2 targets, 2 catches for Taron Johnson. And all of these guys are 30 yards, 28 yards, 18 yards, 17 yards, 12 yards. There is just a lot of mid sprinkled throughout all of that. And that's just not good enough when it comes to really needing to have one more impactful guy in house to do things. I will put one asterisk on this. God damn it. I want to see James Cook more in the passing game. We won't get it. I'm not saying I expect it, but holy crap, could we just please maybe see that a little bit more? Because, I mean, 27 carries for 114 yards. You see how dynamic he is. He is a good pass catcher. I still don't get it when you are having a pass catcher issue. I digress. We'll go back to the question originally. Wide receivers number 1, edges number 2, we'll call it. And I still put kind of an impactful DB safety in there. You're not necessarily looking for a strict boundary corner. You are an injury away from it still being a problem, but someone that could maybe be rotated throughout there, maybe has some experience on the boundary, but overall could be moved around as a piece as well. Maybe be kind of like a Cam Lewis type of individual that comfortable at free safety, comfortable in the box safety, comfortable at nickel or dime corner, whatever it is, kind of can be moved around. There are players out there that could be potentially that guy for you that are available at the deadline that I would put that there just because that essentially to me, if we not saying it's going to happen at all, but if we were to move for a receiver, an edge, and that kind of interior DB kind of off defensive weapon, we'll call it for lack of a better term, that would put me in a very comfortable spot where it's like, hey, let's hit the ground running. Let's go get it. Let's get the job done at that moment in time. But receiver still priority number 1 for me, Josh.
I'm with you. I'm not sure if it'll be priority number 1 for the Bills, especially reading some of the reports about them kicking the tires on some defensive tackles. I think what's most interesting, and I actually want to pull this up. I had hesitated to look at Michael Hoyt's snap counts today, but what I want to see is if the eyeball test was actually accurate about where he lined up the majority of this game. And PFF is going very slowly, so we're gonna talk through this one. You saw a lot of Michael Hoyt lining up like over the center and guard, rushing from the interior, but standing up and doing so. And that was a club that McDermott had not played. And that to me reeks of we've been kind of holding on to that one because Michael Hoyt hasn't been here, but two, because it's regular season. Good teams tend to hold things back in the regular season. So detailed positions on PFF. Do they have the stuff up yet? Not particularly. All right. So what you saw a lot from the Bills where they would put Rousseau, Bosa, Epinesa, whoever's on the field on the edges, and then Hoyt would go up the middle with Dorian Williams, who, by the way, there my brain is all over the place. There's a Belichickian thing happening on this defense with McDermott right now. He's figuring out what guys do well, and he's really only asking them to do that. What have we learned about Dorian Williams 2 years into this league? He's not an every down linebacker. He doesn't play well in space, in coverage. Going forward, he might be one of the best downhill linebackers on this team. Blitzing, he's the best linebacker on this team, and it might not even be close. So McDermott is putting him in positions to succeed. There was Dorian Williams and Michael Hoyt lined up in the middle with the edges on the side, and there were no true defensive tackles on the field a lot of times. And then when Hoyt went out, you saw that with Javon Solomon. I'm going a long way around to make this point. I don't know who a perfect fit is for what the role Hoyt looked like he was going to have, particularly against these Chiefs. Now, he was going to play some edge for this team. So, like, if the Bills were to go out, Luka, and say trade a third round pick for a Jalen Phillips or something like that, that would fill the edge rusher need. But would that really just kind of upgrade Epinesa, or would it actually fill the Hoyt role? I look at this team and I'm thinking Greg Rousseau could probably do a lot of the Hoyt stuff. He's a guy that can rush inside. He has the athleticism. I could see the Bills doing that, going out and targeting an edge and then really just letting Rousseau kind of be that new joker on defense. You saw Javon Solomon fill in. I'm very curious to see how he looked because he's a unique athlete. People forget he led college football in sacks. So we'll see what that looks like. They do also have Landon Jackson, who's a freakish athlete, but seems like they're kind of giving him a redshirt year. And folks, just as an aside, please don't freak out about Landon Jackson not dressing. Luka and I called this the day after he was drafted. He wasn't going to see the field this year, barring injury. There were too many numbers, and he's not going to participate on special teams. That was a draft pick to put in your pocket for 2026. And there's no reason to have an opinion on him either way. There's no reason to think he's great. There's no reason to think he's bad. There's just be excited about what we see next year. But I'm with you. I think it's receiver. And part of that is you do get Ed Oliver back in the playoffs. You still have TJ Sanders coming back at some point. I know it didn't look great early on, but there's a real chance that that's a guy that can come in and help you out. And every week we're seeing improvement from Dayon Walker, and we're gonna get Daquan Jones back. I do think the Bills are probably going to be okay at defensive tackle. Now, if you're talking about taking like a home run swing and going for like a Quinnen Williams, well, that's a whole new ball game. But is that realistic with the situation the Bills are in? I don't think going out and getting someone like a Tavondre Sweat from Tennessee really moves the meter on what this Bills team needs. So that's where I come back to receiver. And truly, I want this team to have a pathway to being unstoppable on offense. When you watch them today, their run game it's everything that Derrick Henry was last year for the Ravens, where it's like, wow, he opens up so much for Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen doesn't need Justin Jefferson on the outside with the way they're running the ball, but he needs somebody better than Keon Coleman. So if the Bills can go out and get a Rashid Shaheed, a Chris Olave, a Brian Thomas Jr., who hurt his hamstring today, so maybe that gets trickier. And Jalen Waddle, who you would figure the Bills have to pay a tax on that if you're going to get him from the Dolphins. Jacoby Myers, they've been in on. That doesn't necessarily interest me as much, but it could be an improvement. I still am with you that they need to find a way to do that. We haven't really talked about the offense today. Stokes was in the chat at halftime, and he was raving about the Bills' offensive line, Luka. It felt like, one, Josh Allen was trusting them. He sat back there. You didn't see the happy feet where he would bail on pockets. He sat back there and let plays develop. And I think this was a dominant performance from both lines. And I think this offensive line really showed that they are one of the elite lines in the sport. James Cook had over 100 rushing yards. I know that for sure because that was the first
Yeah,
time.
114.
My stats have not updated for
Yeah,
some reason.
27 for 114.
Yeah, my box score I'm looking at has him at 64 yards, and that's not right. There you go, 27 for 114. Josh Allen, 23 of 26, by the way. This offensive line, Luka, I think people don't really realize around the league how good it is. I do think that their guard play is like above average, and that's fine. But this offensive line really won the day today. And James Cook is fantastic. Ray Davis had 3 snaps today. I think there's a chance that as this trade deadline comes up on Tuesday, that Ray Davis is a piece the Bills could send out. Whether it's an asset to bring in somebody else and you elevate Frank Gore, because there's a lot of teams looking for running backs, or just somebody to include in a trade that helps sweeten the pot to get a player you want. He has fallen so far behind, so out of favor. We know that James Cook is the zone runner and Ray Davis is the gap runner. And he is kind of a fish out of water. And they're trying to have him run zone runs because you don't want it to be a tell when he's on the field. But he is to a point where it's almost not worth giving him a jersey on game day anymore. I don't want to complain about it because I love the fact that they're letting James cook, but I am a little concerned about the longevity of James Cook as we go into the cold months and into the playoffs of him continuing to handle such a workload. It'd be nice to see if there's somebody else out there that could take some load off. What do you think happened with Ray Davis this year?
I honestly couldn't begin to think what has happened. I hear what you're saying when it comes to, maybe just the run scheme doesn't fit how he needs to be successful, or how he believes he can be successful, or believe what he's seen is accurate and this and that. Man, JSN is unbelievable.
Sure.
So I just, something is wrong mentally. I mean, maybe there's something physically there that just no one's aware of, but it just feels like something mentally is just not clicking for him all of a sudden after a full off season as a pro. And just the Bills aren't satisfied with what they're seeing. I mean, as fans, we're not satisfied with what we're seeing, of course, as well, but we don't know the day in, day out of it. And clearly, as you said, the snaps keep going down. He had all of three snaps. He doesn't show up even on the box score entirely with those 3 snaps. Um, I hear the burnout concern with James Cook, and it's one of those things where I understand that, but I will add to this, Josh. Love seeing him get 27 carries in a game like this. I love every ounce of it. This is the kind of game. I mean, and you heard me earlier saying I still would love to see James Cook more involved more in the passing game. It's just, it's something that drives me insane that it doesn't feel like they want to do that. Ty Johnson is more likely to be involved in the passing game than James Cook. I think that's criminal. But you do need something else available there to be as a complementary runner. It's just, it does, you worry about the ticking clock that is something, just the wear and tear on James Cook's body from all of these touches and the heavy involvement. And it's just the nature of the position that is the running back. That is just the inevitable thing of it. So I just, could something be happening? I mean, it does feel like that kind of Zach Mossian situation where it's like, hey, it's just not working out. Like you said, pot sweetener. We got this guy, Ray Davis. There is tape on him of being successful in this offense last season. Clearly not working this season, but if you want to see what you got out of him, if you liked him, so on and so forth, we'll do this in a pick for a guy we like, whatever it is. That does feel like a potential thing going on. I don't know. I wouldn't begin though to answer your question to understand what has happened to Ray Davis. It's just, it is not working, and the snap count of 3 is an alarming one to me. It's the most alarming thing in his career arc of that is time with the Bills that I I just wonder, if they are potentially just phasing him out because they just don't like what they're seeing, and inevitably they might move him at the deadline. Just, Josh, I could even see a scenario where they just move him for a pick at the deadline, be like, hey, we're going to give you a new place. Like it's just not clicking here. It's not working here. Like you said, the value of him being active on game days feels like it's getting to a point where it's not even above, we need you out of the building. We'll take the 6th round pick, 7th round pick, whatever it is that we'll get for you. Like that is more valuable to us right now as an asset than you active on game days. I don't even like, are you elevating Frank Gore Jr. then at that point? And maybe Frank Gore Jr. can provide something better for you potentially. It's unfortunate just because Ray Davis, we had seen success with him last season, as I mentioned, but who knows why it's just not working anymore. And yeah, that feels like a definite possibility come Tuesday at the deadline.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a couple interesting names out there if you really wanted to, like, flip a back for a back. Tony Pollard is a guy in Tennessee that I think comps fairly closely to James Cook. He's not James Cook, but he's got a similar profile, similar speed. I think what the Bills need at this point is a guy that's more comfortable in his own scheme. And maybe but Tony Pollard's got a little bit of a heavy contract. I don't know that the Bills need to be aggressive fixing a running back situation. Like Lucas said, it's probably just elevating Frank Gore. But you could even see a situation where there's a guy in Miami, just an example, Jalen Wright, who was drafted in the 4th round a couple years back, just never cracked the depth chart, speed for days. But then Ollie Gordon showed up this year and just totally made him inconsequential. A-Chain's obviously a beast. Could you see a situation where the Bills and Dolphins are just like, hey, both of these guys, it's not happening here. Why don't we give them a fresh start and hey, swap spots, something like that. I don't expect anything meaningful. Like Lucas said, 6th, 7th round pick for Ray Davis, or maybe it's a sweeten the pot where the Bills are offering like a 3rd or 4th round pick for Jacoby Myers. And the Raiders are like, you got to give us something else. And the Bills are like, fine, take Ray Davis. Like that's kind of where we're at. But yeah, I think at this point you have to ask yourself what benefit does he have being here? But this draft class, Luca, it's still very early. Looking pretty good for the Bills. You have obviously Max Harrison and Deion Walker, who are massively impactful on the defense. Both of them played at Kentucky, by the way. Bills Mafia is about to be Kentucky football fans. You still have that untapped potential of Landon Jackson that we'll start to learn about next year. TJ Sanders is going to come back at some point and should have a long runway to play with that Oliver being out. You're seeing Jordan Hancock get on the field quite a bit now in safety. I expect that to continue. And Jackson Hawes has been an absolute home run of a pick for day 3. He has revolutionized the running game. He's a better blocker than Alec Anderson, and by the way, he's a tight end, so he can block, and so he can catch too. So, I mean, as much as people like to get on Bean, I'm certainly one that does that. So far, so good for this draft class. All right, Luca, let's do game balls and game checks for this game against the Chiefs. We'll wrap it up with a little bit of around the league or trade deadline, whatever's on our mind, a potpourri, if you will. Who gets your? I'm going to give you this first one because I think you've earned it based on some conversations in your group texts in the living room. Who gets your game ball for the Bills 28-21 victory over the Chiefs?
I mean, our pre-show backroom conversation, I let it off as there's a clear candidate for my game ball or our game ball when it comes to this game, and I'm looking up something in live time because I want to get the date right. So I apologize about that, but you bring up how it kind of hits close to home, and let me just preface this. Today was an excitement kind of joke, just pulling up old conversations with good friends, close friends that Josh is referring to. And I even made a comment in a very loud fashion that was, I got receipts. And there was another word in the mix of that statement. But this individual was a topic of conversation among friends and acquaintances back after that lovely preseason game on August 17th that Cole Bishop gets my game ball because this is exactly the reason and the payout, and we've seen stuff. We talked about him earlier in the episode. We've seen it already where it's like it's working out, but this was the ultimate payout as to why you stick with a guy like Cole Bishop, even after seeing performances like we did in that Bears preseason game and what we saw early on in his career. I understand when people want to see it first before they can trust it and believe it. I get that thought process of got to see it to believe it. Understandable. But you just have to trust certain unknowns and go with it and understand that, yes, it might not be the smoothest thing to go, but to have the mentality as of August to go at this point in time, I'm more comfortable with DeMar Hamlin out there than Cole Bishop, and not understand how short-sighted that is and just not understand what ceiling plays are and just what the ultimate payout can be like we saw tonight by sticking with a guy like Cole Bishop. I mean, to be critical on him and be like, we're in a Super Bowl window, we can't be relying on this second-year Cole Bishop guy who's going into his first full year. The frustration of what we saw on August 17th against the Bears is understandable, but you still have to realize that and recognize that having the mentality of I'm more comfortable with DeMar Hamlin at that moment in time, you got to see the ceiling of that individual and it wasn't good enough. And it was recognized going into this season that it wasn't good enough. And you have this option of untapped potential sitting there, Cole Bishop. So I, argue and argued with everyone out there that it's like, look, I can understand where your head's at right now, but when you already see the max return on someone and understand that what a season long of that was not good enough, and now you have an unknown potential that is untapped right now, and yes, there's growing pains and you're not enjoying what you're seeing out of it in meaningless football. We need to go with that because the ceiling play is far greater than that. and the athleticism and everything else will click. And as soon as that switch flips, it will be a beautiful thing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, number 24, Cole Bishop, shows you exactly what the beautiful benefit is of when that switch flips with an athletic safety that can do everything you ask of them. And Cole Bishop, you are a beautifully deserving, perfect human being of this game ball in week 9 after a win over the Chiefs. You deserve it, 24.
I am gonna think about this for a second. Bishop makes a lot of sense. I mean, he was the player that was most talked about by people when I was tracking it on Twitter, and the fact that where he's come from and where he's at. There's so many ways I want to go with this. For Luca, you said something off the air that it's kind of one of those things. Like, do we want to say it on the air? But I'm gonna say it, and uh, the defense looked better with Cam Lewis out there than Taron Johnson. Like, I'm sorry. You get the slow guys out, you get the fast guys in, the defense looks better. We said it about Tre'Davious White. We're saying it about Taylor Rapp. It's time to have the Taron Johnson conversation. I get that he's good in run support, but he's not covering anybody out there. The defense looked better today. I think it's worth keeping in mind on. And I'm going to go with Cam Lewis. I wanted to go with Michael Hoyt because of the fact that his season is over and he's been overly impactful. I thought about going with Joey Bosa, who kind of today reminded you what the Bills could be getting in this acquisition and just, keep him healthy. Cam Lewis, I posted this on Twitter. Talk about a guy who is just a joker of a player. And I mean that as somebody who's all over the field. Bills cornerback snaps today. There were 60 defensive snaps. 2 cornerbacks played every snap. One was Christian Benford, which makes sense. The other one was Cam Lewis, Luca. He played 34 at slot, 7 at safety. The other at, I don't even know, but he would lined up at safety, lined up at boundary corner. I'm sure he lined up a little bit at like thick linebacker. He was all over the field, a movable chess piece for the Bills. And I think it's something the Bills have to continue to look at. It's not about the names on the back of the jersey. If Tre'Davious White can get benched, if Taylor Rapp, who was, one of their prize tools from last year, can get benched, and then, Jordan Poyer's losing snaps to a 5th round rookie, it's okay to question if for the greater good, it's not a bad idea to rotate someone like a Cam Lewis in and just get speed out there. At some point, speed has to win the day. There's so many guys on defense I wanted to call out. Obviously, James Cook. I mean, he's starting to get to that Josh Allen territory where it's like you feel like you're cheating if you give him the game ball. Christian Benford was fantastic today. I thought Joey Bosa was fantastic, but overall, I'm gonna go with Cam Lewis. But just all around, I kind of wanted to almost give it to McDermott because since he's taken over play calling, this defense has been suffocating. And if it wasn't for giving up a 4th and 17, this defense would have held the Chiefs to 13 points. Incredible. But they gave up the 4th and 17, and we probably should talk about that, but we're not going to. All right, Luca, who gets your game check?
Or are we, Josh? Or
Uh-oh.
are we? You teed this one up perfectly without even realizing it. I was trying to go through who could get my game check, and it feels like low hanging fruit could be a guy we even talked about earlier when it comes to the backfield and specifically Ray Davis for just being nothing. But I found myself frustrated in multiple moments in this game with things that were happening with the Bills, and they all circled around one individual. And I think this is a one-off situation. I think that this is not something we will see trending moving forward. Just felt like we saw a flash of the past when it comes to Sean McDermott today. And there were questionable times of calling timeouts. And it had me saying out loud, like, when Sean McDermott takes timeouts to set up defensive plays, it's almost like the percentage chance of screwing it up and allowing a conversion to happen increases. And we saw that yet again today in a key 4th and long moment that it's like, what in God's name happens when McDermott pulls out the tee, talks to the team, figures out what he wants to do with this defense, and all of a sudden the end result is what it is? I don't get it. Just the lack of understanding once again, and it's been a long time. It's been a while since we've had, or at least I've had the thought that McDermott really has poorly managed timeouts, clock management, all of that stuff. But I think today was kind of a regression, and maybe it was the emotions of certain situations getting to him. But 2 timeouts being spent in the second half on defensive just setups, alignments, whatever you want to call it. I mean, the one was, of course, following where the defense is breaking the huddle after a hot swap of related to injuries on the offensive line for the Chiefs, where you have clear amount of time to at least relay some stuff. I know you want to see personnel and stuff and make decisions off of that, but there should be some sort of call being placed, or it's chess. You're thinking ahead. You're thinking of moves ahead here. Like the fact that the Bills broke out of a huddle quick and you had 4, 5, 6 defensive players with their arms up going, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? And eventually McDermott calls a timeout and relays a play. Like head scratching, very, very head scratching. And I'm not overly critical of the field goal attempt at the end. You make it, it puts the game away. But I know there's some people saying that the train of thought should be punting that ball, pinning them as deep as possible, and also killing clock in that moment more. You know, you'd probably kill a couple more seconds more with a punt than you would on a field goal attempt. I'm not going to be, crazy about that one, but I just think the timeout utilization and the clock management was a little suspect and stuff that it's worth to be said. Like it is worthy enough to be said in this moment that I think McDermott gets my game check award, not because I was just through the moon. I'm anti McDermott right now, but I just felt like it was a little bit of a regression from what we've seen, for over a season now, where it felt like he finally had it in his bag. It was, he fully grasped the concept of everything. And this had a little bit more of a 2020, 2021 McDermott touch and feel to it, that it was just head scratching decisions with those timeouts and whatnot that I'm not a fan. Again, I just want to preface it though. I don't think this will become a trend. This just felt like maybe the game and the emotions of it all got to him a little bit more than we've seen in recent years. That, McDermott's my game check recipient.
My game check recipient, Ray Davis. Like, isn't this just like why we created the game check? You could have not shown up today and it wouldn't have mattered. Ray Davis is the ultimate one for that. Although I did think about Jamarcus Ingram, another guy that I'm at a point with him where I just assume not seeing him get a jersey on game day. Not sure what he does. I mean, I know he's a backup slot, yada yada yada, but I'm sorry, he looks lost out there. His UB counterpart, though, Cam Lewis, massive day. Super proud of that guy. I mean, that's some of the coolest stuff in sports, right? When a guy is a walk-on basically to an NFL team, an undrafted free agent, just trying to do anything he can to make a name for himself, hangs out on the practice squad for multiple years, finally gets a chance to make the roster. And then to many fans, his most memorable moment is getting dunked on by Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson, who's going to get a gold jacket someday, by the way.
Yeah.
And people will never forgive him for that. And I will always argue with folks like Cam Lewis is such an important player for this team. I just love it. He'll never get his flowers. It's fine. Players like that, they go under the radar for a reason. The Bills know how important he is, and it showed today. All right, Luka. Christmas season is upon us. Halloween is behind us, so it's officially Christmas season in my family, anyway. Let's consider the trade deadline like Christmas. We've talked about it ad nauseum. The next time we're on the air Wednesday night, we will know what happened at the trade deadline. First off, just very quickly, we've talked about all the options. Give me the first thing Luka writes down on his Christmas list. I want a player who would make this the merriest Christmas for Luka possible. It doesn't even have to be overly realistic, but I mean, if you're going to say Myles Garrett, I might just roll my eyes at you, or Justin Jefferson. But like, of the names we've mentioned, what's your pie in the sky? And then I will tell you, give me a prediction for the Bills, and we'll see who's right. But first of all, pie in the sky.
Pie in the sky, number one present underneath the tree when it comes to the trade deadline for me is Greg Dortch. No, I'm just kidding. It's Brian Thomas Jr. BTJ, I mean, draft crush of last year. It felt like there was even a moment in time where if Bean wanted to be aggressive, he absolutely could have moved up in order to secure a Brian Thomas Jr. And now all of a sudden you have a scenario where this team that just drafted him, for whatever head scratching reason, is not wanting to work with him and move on with him, move forward with him, whatever you want to say. And it sounds like the asking price is understandably reasonable for a guy of Brian Thomas Jr.'s talents. And I will say, I know I mentioned it to you off air, and that's what you're referencing. It looked like it was a hamstring injury. I did read something now that I guess it was an ankle injury. It was on a smaller TV in my family room, and I thought I saw him grabbing his leg. That's why I relayed that, and I didn't see any information. I guess it might have been an ankle injury. Regardless, I am all for it. I don't imagine it's serious. Hopefully it's not serious just for watching him, because I think he's an exciting player, but he would be absolutely number one on the list. I don't think there's an asking price that feels unreasonable within reason that Brian Thomas Jr. would be like, oh, we might have actually gave up a little bit too much for him. And again, within reason, I just think if they're out there asking for a one for Brian Thomas Jr., the Bills are a very late one. We see what comes with late ones. You might get a Maxwell Harrison. You might get a Kyer Elam. Like, like this is the game of drafting late in the first round. Would you rather have a 50-50 shot of getting something maybe decent in a year or two, or maybe you already have something that looks like it can play at the NFL level that could provide you a much greater need at the receiver position, that is Brian Thomas Jr., when the big moments count this season. So yeah, BTJ is number one on the list.
So something weird must be going on there, right? I was
Yeah.
thinking about this week. Something weird could be going on. And you know what clicked in my brain? The Bills have fantastic intel on Brian Thomas Jr. Gabe Davis played in Jacksonville last year. Gabe Davis, for everything fans want to say about him, is one of the hardest working players on the entire roster. He would know first and foremost what is going on with Brian Thomas Jr. So you pull Gabe Davis down and say, "Hey, Gabe, tell us about this kid." He is my pie in the sky one too. If you play the stock market, you always want to buy when the stock is at its lowest, when you think it's going to go back up. If Brian Thomas Jr. had been available for trade this summer, it would have been on the same level of like a Micah Parsons deal because of where he's at on his rookie deal, how explosive he looked. But this has been a disaster of a season. He's had multiple injuries, he's had bad drops. He's not on the same page with Trevor Lawrence, which is never good when you're talking about the guy who they have as the face of their franchise. And then they went out and drafted Travis Hunter, who looks way more comfortable at wide receiver right now than cornerback. That's my pie in the sky, and I love everything about it because I feel like it's a great chance for the Bills to buy low on a superstar. And I love what Jeremy White said earlier this week on WGR. If you were to trade, say, a one in Keon Coleman for Brian Thomas Jr., you're essentially doing what we all wanted them to do in the draft just a year later. You're trading up. And I think that trade makes sense for both. And that's my pie in the sky. All right, Luca, prediction. We're sitting here on Wednesday night. Do the Bills make a trade? Put your name on a player. Who's going to be a Bill come Wednesday on our live show?
Ooh, I mean, that's a tough one to answer there, Josh. I do think a trade happens. Let me just start there. I think a trade occurs. I think um, we will see the Bills acquire someone. What I will also say is we're talking wide receiver here. That's pie in the sky. My dream scenario. I don't think that's what the Bills inevitably trade for. Uh, I think the Michael Hoyt injury might play a bigger impact in the short term to their brains, that they will move for a defensive lineman. And I think there's a guy out there that feels like I've seen the name tossed around. I believe he was out due to a quad injury today, but also on that injury report for that team, you notice the names, and ironically enough, they're on a lot of trade, being dangled around as trade bait. And it's like, how bad are these injuries? Is it the Titans going, hey, they might be a little banged up, so let's just make sure they're healthy potentially because they're going to be trade? Arden Key is a name I think would be one to pay attention to. I don't know necessarily if he fits perfectly, but at the same time, he's got a size to him that is nice. There's a part of his game that feels like if you bring him in, it could have a Michael Hoyt like impact that I think everything you see with that, it just, I wouldn't be surprised if they were to move. He's a free agent next year, as well. He's a very low number when it comes to what you would have to do to bring him in. Yeah, Arden Key is kind of a name that I would circle as potentially being moved in. I will add, if receiver is being moved for, I'm not even entirely sure. I would say I'm confident that they would get a Rashid Shaheed. That is the one that I would say is my like dream realistic scenario. Um, but I will say you put it out as a meme, Josh, at one point that they wouldn't, they dare wouldn't. Zay Jones just has something about him that just goes, oh, they wouldn't dare do that. But also, free agent next season. He's being used kind of in the Cardinals, and I will give him this. He has made at least some reliable catches for them. That's more than some other receivers in that building can say. And I think he's coming off injury that I believe he is healthy right now, but it's a low number that it would actually be palatable and being brought in and rotational and blah, blah, blah. That Zay Jones could be someone that would just be a little bit of a meme and kind of a laugh. But overall, it wouldn't be overly shocking if they somehow brought Zay Jones back to the 716. So I'll just throw those names out there.
I like that. I do think they're gonna be in on Shaheed. I think that they're gonna kick the tires on Jacoby Myers. I don't. I'll just say this now. I don't need the Bills to go out and spend a third round pick on Rashid Shaheed. I just don't. Um, and I get that there's like, oh well, what are you afraid of losing the next Wayne Carter? That's not a good way to manage assets. I don't think it's good business to spend a third round pick on somebody who's going to be here for 8 games, and unless it's a proven high caliber player like what we thought Amari Cooper was. I think if with Rasul Douglas, you knew you had term on him. You had another year after that. Rashid Shaheed's going to walk, and people will say, "Well, you get a comp pick. What kind of comp pick are you going to get for a guy who's a 2 or a 3?" I get he's fast. I like Rashid Shaheed. I don't want to overspend for him. There's a couple other names out there that I think are interesting. I do think that if the Jets are having this fire sale, and I know that people are going to roll their eyes at another Bills reunion, Harrison Phillips makes a ton of sense. A ton of sense as a guy to come in and kind of help, clog the gap that's lost by some of these defensive line injuries and take the pressure off the Bills. I like your Arden Key idea. I think there's a path with the Titans to fill 2 or 3 needs if they're willing to eat some salary on some guys. You get an Arden Key and you get a Tony Pollard or a Calvin Ridley, and they eat some salary. Like the Bills could really fill some holes there. I don't know if I would predict that, but ultimately my one prediction that I think is going to happen, not my wish list prediction. Um, I at this point I'd predict nothing happens,
Mm.
but I'm like 50-50 on that. And if I had to give you one name, I would go with Brian Thomas Jr. And I know that sounds like fanboy wishing for the best. Brandon Bean is a dice roller. He drafted Josh Allen when the world was telling him that this kid didn't have the mechanics to survive in the NFL. He gave a huge amount of guaranteed money to Von Miller. Brandon Bean, I think, looks at Brian Thomas Jr. as somebody that could take his offense to the next level. And it sure feels like he's falling out of favor in Jacksonville. And I don't know what the price will be, but I think it's certainly a price the Bills will be willing to pay, unless it's something stupid like 3 first round picks. No, thank you. But if you can get him for a first round pick, which after today you're 6-2 with games left against the Dolphins and the Jets, I mean, the Bills are going to do the thing where they're going to be picking in the late 20s again at worst. And even if it includes Keon Coleman, I think Brandon Bean will do it because Brandon Bean is not afraid to take chances. And I think there's reason to believe, again, Luka and I, we're not insiders. We don't ever claim to be. I think there's reason to believe that Josh Allen and Sean McDermott both are well aware of the receiver issue. on this team. So I don't think it's something that the Bills are just not aware of. And Sean McDermott has come out recently and been about as vocal as Sean McDermott will be in telling you that the pass game has to be better and the receivers have to do better. And so I think if the Bills go into the trade market, they're going to go big fish hunting and big game hunting, whatever you want to say. And to me, that comes down to Chris Olave, Brian Thomas Jr., and Jalen Waddle. Well, process of elimination tells me it's not going to be Jalen Waddle because the Dolphins aren't going to send him to you. And boy, oh boy, does it sound like Chris Olave is not for sale from New Orleans, which if he was, I would take it in a heartbeat. But Brian Thomas Jr., I think Brandon Bean will meet the asking price if he's available. There's reason to believe the Bills loved him in the draft. And I just think that I think the Bills buy the dip, so to speak. And this is a risk that I would endorse. Like, take a shot on this kid. And if it doesn't work out, I I will applaud the Bills for trying it. I mean, if it doesn't work out and he's like terrible, then maybe I'll regret saying that. But I predict if the Bills make a trade, it's going to be a significant one. So that's my flag plant. All right, Luca. The Bills did the thing. They beat the Chiefs. We're used to that by now. It does not mean they're going to lose in January, by the way, folks. That's not how the world works, even though it sure kind of feels like it sometimes as Bills fans.
Yeah.
But we're going to do the thing. We're going to be back next week to talk about Bills Dolphins, which doesn't seem quite as exciting, although there's plenty of reason to believe the Dolphins might be trading away some of their best players, which is awfully nice of them to do before they play the Bills. And Luke and I'll be back next week to talk about that. We'll be back on Wednesday to preview Bills Dolphins. I'll be back at halftime to talk about Bills Dolphins halftime. And then we'll be back, obviously, next week to talk about it on the post game show. For Luca, I am Josh McCarty. The Bills improved to 6-2. The Chiefs fall to 5-4. We own the Chiefs in October and November. We will see you next week on Bills Chat.